This is a workshop by Malcolm Mobutu Smith at UNCP in 2004. Discussions on his ceramic work and past graffiti art.
What Steve is for you guys. Anything or anyone you want to know about, he's the place for you to go get that information, and then it's up to you to educate yourself once you know where that information is. I don't know what it was. Both my parents are artists, but neither one of them were ceramic artists. My mother was a painter and a drawer, and you'll see in my slides some of the stuff I had to compete with as a young child, and I'd throw temper tantrums because I couldn't draw like my mom could. But you know, you have to have something to compete against. And my father has a degree in sculpture, and they both met at Michigan State. And I sort of always knew in the back of my mind that I wanted to be an artist, but I went through my phases. I wanted to be a doctor and a mathematician. I went to a magnet math school, math and science school for elementary school and stuff like that. But I don't know what it is. You know, some people may ask you, well, why do you like clay? And they ask you individually, what are you going to say? You know, there's the wonderful pap and touchy-feely answers about, you know, this wonderful malleable material, it's so therapeutic, and I can express myself so easily in the mud. But ultimately, that's just a surface veneer of like why we're attracted to it. And I still haven't come up with a good answer of what it was that really locked me in when I stepped in the door as a sophomore into ceramics, and I said, this is what I want to do. But I said at that point in time, this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to be. I want to be a teacher, and I want to make art as a clay artist. And I've really never veered from that track. So in high school, I soaked up every stacks of Ceramics Monthly and Studio Potter and American Ceramic Magazine that was sitting in the studio covered with clay, you know. And you start to get familiar with certain images that repeat themselves over and over again. And in Ceramics Monthly, you say, oh, who's this guy, Bob Tran? Oh, who's this guy, Val Cushing? Oh, who's this guy, Ken Ferguson? Who's this Betty Woodman person? Who's this Patty Warshina? Pretty soon you know in a semester, you know like the whole pantheon of contemporary ceramics. And then you start learning, well, they didn't look at each other to get ideas. What did they look at to get their ideas? And you see really quickly that they're looking at history. So then you have to start looking at history. Because you keep looking at contemporary sources, it gets a little nepotistic, it gets a little too close to home. And you're inventing on someone else's inventions, or you're trying to, or you're copying. And copying is fine for a while. But eventually you got to go to the source so that you can pull something new and the original out of that stuff. But I fell in love with making pots. I made thousands of pots in high school. I would get the keys. He'd leave me the keys so I could lock up, you know, 6 o'clock at night. Or when I was in gymnastics, you know, as my sport, and I would get done with practice, I'd go there afterwards and be there until the janitors kicked me out, or I'd crawl through the window, you know, at night to get home or whatever. But you have to have that fire burning inside you if you want to get good at this stuff. This stuff will punish you. It'll knock you down if you're going to come in during class and do it. You're going to say, well, I'm not getting anywhere. My pots keep falling down. But I say all that to say that, you know, I bump into a lot of people that have different feelings about what the education system is like, or about, and especially college, and what you're supposed to know before you get there. I'm a proponent of, if you're going to go to school, and you're going to chafe against this maybe, but you ought to know why you're there. For some reason. I mean, I really don't like to hear students just going through the motions and say, well, I'm going to figure it out by being here. And I do see some value in that. I mean, students that come in for 1 year and try to figure out, they may not have been exposed to everything in the world yet, and they get exposed to it by being in a university. That's fine and dandy, but you got to figure it out pretty quickly so that you can start to tailor what it is you want to do while you're there. Otherwise, you're sort of treading water and wasting your money. So I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and so I also tailored where I was going to look. My parents didn't give me any limitations about where I could go to school. It was just a limitation of money. You know, well, we're going to give you this much money, you can go wherever you want. So I went to Kansas City Art Institute in Kansas City, Missouri. And because I figured out through my own study that Kansas City at the time had a pretty good partnership with Alfred, which was my ultimate desire. I wanted to go to Alfred for grad school. So I said, well, where do I need to go for undergrad to be able to have a portfolio that was going to be strong enough that Alfred would even spend his hat last night, so that it was at least a little bit firmer for today so I could do the stuff I want to do. But these are sort of jazzy improvisations on the vessel form. So this is just the bare bones of a vessel, you know, just a volume with some breath in it, some articulation of an identifiable lip that's not ordinary, and then I sort of prompted it with these sort of movements. Now these movements aren't completely spontaneous, they're ways that I've decided to bend this pot that are dynamic versus what's going on with the basic skeleton of the pot. And I do play with the trajectory a little bit. I might push one a little bit farther than another someday, or do a different angle, or I might decide to do parallel angles someday and asymmetrical angles another day, but something, I know what I'm doing there, so I'm setting the groundwork. Anyway, so right now I'm sort of mapping out ideas about what I'm going to do to this form, pushing and pulling the form, pulling things out, pushing things back. Before I went to the Kansas City Art Institute, though, I was lucky enough that I also learned through those magazines about other places to study clay that are outside of the academy, be it high school academy or the college system. So there are places like Anderson Ranch and Penland and Aramont and Peters Valley, Watershed, Haystack. There's something Steve cares enough about you to bring people in to augment. And it sounds like you guys have quite a bit of visiting artists. So I actually had the opportunity at my high school, another great thing, and I don't know every high school has this, but we have a career elective. And career elective was an ability in your senior year to go out, work as an intern, or work in the area that you've decided is going to be your major in college. So it's sort of like the high school I went to sort of really insinuated very early on that you should know what you want to do before you enter college. Contemporary clay world, but he's a pretty mean cuss. Neat guy. If you're going to look at him for like absorbing who he is, not just listening to what he says all the time, but he would sit there and he'd throw, he's this gigantic guy, he's like 6'3" or 4" and 325 pounds, just slovenly gut hanging out. But at the same time, that he's all these things as a person. If you watch him in the way that he touches this material that's our unifying the thing that we all connect with, you know, it's just this lump of unformed mass. He's making a little T-bowl, and he's telling you about the squirrels that are fucking up in his rafters, excuse my French. But he's like, oh, God damn it, these squirrels are up there making a racket in my studio, doing all whatnot up in there. And meanwhile, he's making this very sensitive, he's not even looking at his hands, he's making this very sensitive little T-bowl that's just sort of, even to someone that at that point I had a little bit of experience throwing, but there was still something magical about the way that he effortlessly produced this, almost with one hand, just sort of squeezed up this T-bowl. And then he's got these gigantic hands, but they're kind of feminine in the fact that they taper, they get very narrow, his fingertips over, and he just took this sponge while he was talking about the activities of his squirrels in the rafters, and he's just dipping a gentle bit of water out of the middle. And that's the thing I remember about that. Even though I'm telling you about the story, the thing I remember is the sensitivity of this guy, this almost like unconscious touch to the clay.